Spain 2, France 1. Oh, my giddy aunt. It was extraordinary, Jim.
It really was.
The 16-year-old boy with the braces scored a great goal. They're through to the final. Lamine Yamal, man of the match. There's photos of him as a baby being carried by Messi. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know if you've seen the clip doing the rounds of him scoring a really similar goal in the under-17 Euros against France in the semi-final, essentially this time last year as well.
Wow.
It is phenomenal. I mean, we've all been waiting for him to score, right? He's had a phenomenal tournament so far, but we've all wanted that moment for him. But obviously, the later and later it gets, the harder and harder it gets. And what a moment to step up! What a hit! He had a couple of chances like it, but to execute that is absolutely phenomenal. He is so assured and so certain in what he's doing. There's such a maturity to his decision making, and it is just. We've never seen anything like it. We've seen a lot of young players break through and be really good, but not 16-year-olds. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he becomes the youngest player to score at the Euros, and also if you
semi.
Yeah, incredible. To extrapolate that out in World Cup football as well. You know, obviously. Right. Pele was the youngest one in the World Cup.
It's not that he excels; it's the way in which he excels.
Yeah,
that implies a much more experienced player,
definitely,
rather than
it's not just youthful exuberance.
A brilliant young player, yeah.
But there's and the reason for that is because there's no obvious rawness about him.
No, yeah.
If you could make a comparison, I mean, clearly the kind of signs and the significance of him being essentially baptised by Lionel Messi as a baby. The implication is clear there, and I'm not going to make that link. But what I am going to say is, if you looked at someone like Wayne Rooney around the similar age, famous goal he scores against Arsenal, the breakthrough season he has, the Euro 2004, it was typified by a rawness, like a street football mentality. Yeah. He's going to do it on his own terms. He had almost a bit of the original Ronaldo about him. He can go round you, but he can go through you as well. It was strength. It was force, it was skill, it was street football. Lamine Yamal isn't that. He's very measured. He's very the things like his weight of pass and
academy product.
The thing, that might be something to do with it. But the decision making that you mentioned there, for me, is really indicative. There's obviously a long way to go for him to perhaps have the career that everyone thinks he can have.
Do you think at the age of 16 he would have smoked as many cigarettes and drunk as many beers as Rooney did?
Absolutely not. I think he can live for 1,000 lifetimes now. But I do want to make the point that sometimes with young wonder kids like this, it's about potential. It's about getting them to play a competitive game for the country so that they can't play anywhere else, right? That's important in the way that...
They've done that. That's in the bag.
Yeah, I don't think with this kid it's that. I think he legitimately deserves to be there. This is not a cameo where he's coming off the bench. No. He's been a huge part of their Euros in its entirety. He plays like someone who's 10 years older, and that piles a lot of pressure on him. He's not going to listen to me anyway. It doesn't make any difference. But it is an incredible thing to witness, because I thought Nico Williams had probably one of the more quiet games he's had in this tournament, yet it didn't really matter because Yamal on the other side, who's only 16, was amazing. And in another circumstance, Nico Williams would be the young wonder kid we're talking about.
That's right.
He's only about 21 as well.
He's also having a really great tournament.
Yeah.
And the thing is he's not stopped growing yet, Yamal. He's all leg as it is.
Yeah, he's very leggy, yeah.
He'll be 100 feet tall and have won everything you can imagine in about 5 years.
Yeah, he will.
Apparently Jesus Navas, who of course started at right back for Spain, is older than Lamine Yamal's dad.
This podcast is older than Lamine Yamal.
Yeah, but not his dad.
That is incredible to think
but
about
Jesus Navas, that's a debilitating fact. I mean, obviously, he probably read that before he started the game, and that's why.
Lamine Yamal's dad's obviously had him when he was young.
But even so.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea though when you talk about young players, when you get them into the camp and so on, and make them feel like this is the international side you want to play for, because one parent's from Equatorial Guinea, one's from Morocco.
Yeah,
I love it. They win the Euros and he goes, right, well they are Spain, right, Morocco. What can we do with you?
Isn't that what Di Stefano did back in the day? He played. I think he played for Argentina, Colombia, and Spain.
A little bit different
reasons.
Well,
if you're starting at 16, you've got time to do all those things, right?
Yeah, even with the Africa Cup of Nations. So
what you're saying is that he basically needs to stay alive for the complete dissolution of Spain as a nation, and then he can go play for someone else.
Well, no, because he's young enough, wouldn't he, Andy, to change? I mean, I just think that he could become the sort of MacGyver of international football. He sort of goes around and sorts out that situation, does that. But until that happens, we won't talk about it, I promise you. But he has been brilliant. Spain have been brilliant. They've now set a record, obviously, because they've won all their games at the Euros. And in a European Championships where people, after the group stages, I think the group stage is always great. We enjoyed it, and certain teams that have been particularly exciting. Even Georgia, as we mentioned, even Albania, didn't score too many goals. It was great to have them there and all that kind of good stuff. But since the knockout phase has kind of come in, the three teams that were talked about as favourites beforehand, Portugal, who of course are out, France, who are now out, England, who are still in, last man standing. The three of those teams have disappointed. There's no two ways about that. Spain are being talked about as if we want to go really purist and so on, are the saviours of this tournament, maybe, Andy. But they have been talked in glowing terms because of the football they've played.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, really.
Are you going to apologise to me, Andy?
Because they stand out on their own, a little bit like Italy 3 years ago. Like a little bit like Italy, they're not perfect, but they're very different to the way that we imagine a modern European Championship or a modern World Cup being won at the end of a very, very full European season.
Yeah.
So there's still a level of inconsistency, but the good bits are so good. It's like, well, actually, maybe you can win a title playing like that. Because in that sense, and I think we forget a lot of the details of how Italy won it in 2021, from the fact that they came in on this massive unbeaten run to the fact, on the other side of it, they were outplayed a little bit by Austria for periods of the last 16 game. Spain in the semi-final. You can overlook all those little bits because globally it was a very different way of winning a title. I think it was set up in a lot of places before the game of this is a battle for the soul of football because France want to play it in a way that doesn't care about entertainment.
Super efficient, basically.
Yeah, whereas Spain are something else. They're about aesthetic beauty. But actually, this game and the way it played out was something this tournament and the knockout stages of this tournament desperately needed. Because something that Deschamps talked about before the game, about the lack of goals. He said, well, it's not just us. Look at Portugal, look at England, who are not exactly banging them in the knockout phases of this tournament.
He didn't mention Scotland, that's out of order.
In the knockout phase of this tournament.
You don't know the whole tournament. Look at Hungary.
And I think it'll be interesting when we see our predictions come out of the envelope.
We might not.
It might not be that interesting, Andy. I might gloss over that.
I think what will be so interesting is that I bet you we've all overrated the number of goals. All of us.
Yeah, that's probably a fair point.
But I think the fact that this game unfolded as it did, that it started as it did, that it ended as it did, that there was that push and pull to it. I think it will be very hard for this tournament to have a game this good again. I thought it was brilliant.
It was a great game, and I think the way it started, we were fortunate as neutrals to get an early goal, weren't we?
Yes.
And an early goal from a team who, because I felt like if Spain had got an early goal, it may well have petered out. Because France have found it hard to score goals.
Yeah.
Spain would have played into Spain's hands, in my view, because of the way they like to control the game. And it was good that France scored an early one.
And the first great thing Yamal did before that was almost set up one for Fabian Ruiz.
Just before that.
Yeah.
And do you know what? That's a great example of Yamal's quality. Of course, you can look at the goal.
Perfect pass.
It was a brilliant, and it was such a good pass that Fabian Ruiz kind of went too far. It was actually Fabian Ruiz's fault that he didn't get over it. He went. You could see where the pass was going. It was perfectly judged. It wasn't.
Well, he's just a bit shit in the air because he's missed quite a few of those in this tournament.
Right, fine.
But that is a signature ball from Yamal.
Exactly.
We've seen it a few times.
You know it's coming. You know it's coming.
Yeah, it's okay to put a cross into a box. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously how you do it, but the way they kind of whip them in, and it's not always head height, as we saw on one or two occasions. It's been very good to watch.
That's a really interesting point, Marcus, because if you think of the modern way of wide forwards who play on the opposite side to their strong foot.
That's right.
It's really interesting for centre-backs and for full-backs, because the full-back has to cover the far post always and follow that in. The centre-backs are generally, maybe not so much these days because it's been happening for a while now, but initially would have been used to dealing with a cross coming in the other way.
That's right.
Which is actually quite much easier to defend against. The ball comes in shapes a different way entirely. It's a completely different challenge. If you've got to face both those, it's a lot harder.
And it's super difficult for a left-footed left-back. At that point, isn't it? But I guess the other thing is when an inverted winger cuts in, it kind of implies a shot, doesn't it? The way that the game is nowadays, we kind of think of wide forwards rather than wingers. Where they're
going to shape to shoot. Yeah,
he's actually an authentic winger, isn't he?
But on the opening goals we were just talking about there, we called it yesterday that the Mbappe versus Navas matchup would be an interesting one. I know Mbappe didn't score, but he did look better, and it felt to me that goal coming as early as it did, Mbappe providing it with an inch perfect pass to Kolo Muani, and Navas not really being able to stop the cross. Now, you could possibly argue that's to do with the ridiculous handball laws, but we won't get into that rabbit hole. But he didn't stop the cross. Mbappe kind of got the better of him, and it was 1-0. At that point, I thought, I would not like to be in Jesus Navas' shoes.
And then he gets booked quite quickly afterwards.
Got booked straight away after.
I worried for him.
Yeah, but then what I really respected about him, I know he went off, but what I really rated is that he really fought his way back into the game.
Yeah.
And because Spain were a goal down, they had to do something. It was almost like he just decided to be way more attacking. Thought, well, I can't do anything about that anyway. We're now behind. I'm going to go forward. And the midfield really helped him out to achieve that. And it was almost as if, I don't want to exaggerate it, but it was almost as if he was able to turn the tide by saying, I'm going to give you something to think about.
Yeah.
And against a player of the quality of Mbappe and against a team of France's quality, that's an amazing thing to do.
Well,
Spain looked after him really well as well. I mean, the way that Rodri covered him, I think shows how strong they are as a collective.
Yeah.
Rodri was just amazing.
I think if you go into it and you look at the players that are on both sides, France should be the winners on most occasions because they do have the better players by some distance, I would argue. But collectively, there's no comparison at all. And really, we've struggled to see very strong collectives at many stages in this competition.
Yeah, I think Danny Carvajal and Robin Lenormand missing was a big thing before the game, and I thought, might this give France the edge? But actually, they stood up to that really, really well. I agree with you on Navas, Luke. He played his way into the game, but I thought Nacho Fernandez did. Because there were a few occasions where it's like, it looks like he's struggling here a little bit. But he just stood up to it. He just stood up to it, and he had a rough time, but he stopped anything really bad from happening. And I thought the pairing of Rodri and Fabian Ruiz is so secure. They give you such technical quality, and Mikel Merino coming on essentially just accentuates that as well.
Fabian Ruiz
control they have is unreal.
This tournament.
Definitely,
Unbelievable.
I thought Rodri was amazing.
Yeah.
I just think the amount of different qualities he brings. Towards the end of the game, of course, he's a calm head. He keeps the ball, he uses it well. It's just,
but he keeps the ball like it's in a fucking safe.
I know, and he's positionally so good. He's just positionally so.
But
good.
when you have a player like that in your team, it really is. If there's an element of panic, you just look at him and you go, "Oh yeah,
that'd be fine."
Like Dad will take care of it all.
Like Conor Gallagher.
No, come on. That's harsh on Conor.
It is, but it's a bit of banter,
right?
Isn't it?
Okay.
It's harsh on Conor Gallagher, but I will make a cheap joke just to give our listeners, most importantly, a laugh.
Yeah.
Like Andy yesterday completely belittled me the whole show to the point where I had to delete a few tweets because I felt like I didn't know what I was talking about. And everything I said yesterday's come true. Andy's sitting there bold as brass, not apologising.
You only deleted the libelous ones.
Even a stopped clock occasionally finds a nut.
Well, the notes from yesterday's show at the top of the running order, written by our producers, not by me.
Written by our producers.
Andy disagreed with Luke that France were there for the taking. I'm just leaving it out there.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Well, that's not how the game unfolded. They weren't there for the taking.
They were taken, though. It was like fucking Liam Neeson out there.
Deschamps has already been asked about his future as France manager. He was understandably a bit prickly towards that, Andy. I mean, do you see him lasting much longer?
Well, he's got a contract until after the World Cup. Of course, that doesn't tend to mean anything after you get knocked out of international tournaments. The big thing is that contract was given to him by the previous president, who he was very close to.
Wow, these wicked whispers.
I think, obviously, the shadow of Zinedine Zidane looms large. And I think the fact that he's had quite poor relations with some of his keen players during this tournament, particularly Antoine Griezmann, might come back to bite him. On the other hand, I think this idea that Zidane is some sort of panacea and it's like, he'll unleash the shackles and they'll play great football under Zidane. No, they won't. If you remember Real Madrid under Zidane, very effective, but very attractive. Yeah, maybe not so much. So I guess it's what you want out of the next stage. I think he will come under some sort of pressure, but whether he'll cede to it, I think he's already made clear that he's not particularly bothered what people outside think. So he won't resign. The FFF will have to move on him if they want him to go.
I mean, it's.
But when you play that kind of football and when you've got a set of players like they do, Like not winning, there's no excuse.
Well, this is it, and it's a very, very similar chat that's happening here, Jim, isn't it? With Southgate in England now. Obviously, Deschamps has won a World Cup, and they've been to 3 finals in his time.
But that's the thing. If you get to the finals and you win one every so often, then fine. But
because by the law of averages,
2018 becomes further and further away, doesn't it?
It does.
As time goes by, and you
a
get
bit like
to the
Yogi
finals,
Love with
you get to the finals and you
2014,
lose them, or you get to the semis and you lose them.
and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, if you were a French football or a France fan rather, you're looking at Deschamps, so you're thinking, come on, it's time to go.
Very, very much so. It is comparable to England, isn't it? Because we're still alive in the tournament, so there's still that sense of energy and optimism, even if it's been underwhelming for a lot of people. But as Andy touched on, if you get to the point where the team never feels like it ignites, and then you're out, it's like it's just your frustration doesn't have any release. You hit this wall of indifference.
Because you're right. Because I think with England, that penalty shootout win, because of the history of penalty shootouts in this country, it's a huge moment, and it does kind of just maybe keep. Well, it doesn't keep a lot of people, but a little bit of some of the knives at bay.
You have a huge adrenaline. You, in a physiological sense, you have a huge adrenaline spike in your body, and you have a great time. Yeah, I don't think France have really.
They've not had any of those moments, Luke, have they? I mean, again, England. No, as I say, it is comparable, but England, they've had the Jude Bellingham overhead kick and the penalty shootout and all that kind of stuff. Whereas really with France, it's kind of like they've scored 4 goals.
It just feels
which
like
was enough to take them to a semi-final.
Only obviously it doesn't matter really how they go in, but only one of them from open play by a France player.
Yeah,
I
mean, they scored 2 more goals than Scotland did at the tournament.
I think the statistic is something like they scored 1 goal from open play from one of their players or whatever from over 90 attempts in the tournament. So there's clearly an issue there with balance, and maybe teams do come to the end of cycles. Your Yogi Love point I think is a good one, but it's also about the manager who's best able to get the best balance out of all these amazing players. I mean, if you look at the players they brought off the bench, it's a mixture of experience and youth. It's a mixture of real quality. And Deschamps' challenge, I think, is to get a team on the pitch that can be the most effective it can be. And I also think the Mbappe thing's a problem. Because if it feels to me that if you're France and you've won the things you've won, you've got the talent you've got. Maybe I'm backfilling the narrative here, but it does feel to me in the morning after they've gone out, you're one that Mbappe broke a nose away from the whole thing being in total disarray, that it's not a good solid structure in my view. So there's definitely that to think about as well. And it's all very well for people to talk about England not having a balance and finding the way of using all the best players. That stuff 100% applies to France as well. They've been underwhelming despite getting to a semi-final. And I felt a bit like, and I said this yesterday, joking aside, one-upping Andy, I did say this yesterday, France have been fine because even at second gear, they're better than their opponents.
Totally.
They weren't ever going to be better than Spain in second gear because Spain have been good and they've got great players themselves who can really hurt you and they've got control in midfield, as Jim's mentioned, and so it came to pass. I mean, the only thing, I thought that Danny Olmo's goal was a goal of amazing.
Yeah, we should mention that.
God, yeah.
It did that so they were undone by 2 amazing bits of quality.
But from a defensive, I mean, look, Yamal, that can happen. I think you could hold your hands up there and go, yeah, fair.
The reason Yamal, by the way, one thing we should say about the Yamal goal, the reason that was such a good goal was because actually, if it wasn't pinpoint off the post, Maignan saves it.
Yeah, well, indeed, to beat him from there, again, it takes something special. Whereas Olmo, obviously, great goal. It's a shame it came off the defender on the way in because then there was all that.
It looked like it might have been going wide to me.
I thought it was going wide.
Certain angles make it look that way, and certain angles make it look the other way. I'm glad it was given to Olmo though.
I think you've got to give it. If it's
but the first and second touch were just amazing.
Beautiful. But from a French point of view, you think to yourself, well, I mean, how did he get that?
They were in a bit of a panic. They had the chances to clear it, and they didn't do it.
But I think the reason that first and second touch is so good, Marcus, is because the ball flies out to him at such speed and he kills it dead. Yeah. The second touch takes him into space. I think he does that so quickly that even top quality defenders found it very hard to react. And you have to remember, a defensive job is effectively a reactive job. There's a certain amount of preparation involved, of course. But when you're in that situation where it's a bit of a goalmouth scramble, they're already on the attack, you're effectively being asked to react to things. And the reason that players score score goals is because they're proactive and defenders can't react quickly enough. And that was a classic example of Olmo. It was just ice in the veins, technique as well.
He's an amazing technician. The first touch for the goal he scored against Georgia was ridiculous as well. But obviously he's got 2 of them here that he's had to do. I think that is also one of the goals of the tournament, purely because of that. Looks a bit messy because it goes in off the defender, but we'll give him that, I think.
And I thought Koundé came off. Yeah, Koundé had a good game. I actually thought he got the better of Cucurella overall, and that's no mean feat given that Cucurella's had a great tournament.
I do feel for the Chaos Muppet though. Getting booed.
He's getting a lot of treatment, wasn't he?
It's not his fault, is it?
He's
got a hand.
He's not going to care about that, though, is he?
I don't think
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, the
Probably
referee,
not from the final.
The referee wasn't there to boo, I suppose.
No, that's true. Absolutely.
I mean, I felt I felt quite happy for Danny Olmo because he obviously missed a penalty last time in the semi-final against Italy, and so for him to get the winner, I think again there's narrative in Spain that I have no idea, but
I think what's the most interesting thing about Spain. Of course, we've talked about the dazzling football, and we should talk about the dazzling football. But what happened to them against Germany could have easily happened to them in this game, because you look at that first half, which is really an incredible performance in so many ways. And I think against many other sides, they're probably like 4 or 5-0 up at the break. In the second half, you cannot keep the energy of that up. And we've talked so much about, what sort of athletic effort is possible at the end of this season going into this championship. And, I think it's affected all of the championship. We were talking about what Bielsa said yesterday. And, we talked about them sort of going into themselves and maybe trying to defend their lead in the last 20 minutes of that game against Germany. Like, athletically, maybe there's not any other option but to do that because you just run out of gas. And they did run out of gas. And France had a few opportunities that, as you said, Luke, they never really looked like taking. Like, Mbappe had a great chance that he smashed a mile over the top.
Yeah, in fact, you back him to score there.
Theo Hernandez the same. And, and you would think normally Mbappe puts those away. But I think globally, the way that they defended in that second half, Spain, was excellent. And that's the bit when we talk about the details that will be forgotten years down the line or generations down the line. Those details will be forgotten because we'll remember all the dazzling football, and we should remember almost touches, and we should remember Yamal's goal. But actually, like Cucurella, who we think of as an attacking left back, where he's been primarily successful is as a defender this tournament, which is something that no one saw coming.
Yeah, and it was personnel changes in that back line as well. So to put in that performance...
they shuffled that very well once Navas was flagging, didn't they? Vivian came on and did very well.
A lot of it comes down to Rodri, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much easier to defend the lead with someone like him in the team. You've been crying out for England. England don't have a player like that. They never really have done.
Well, I think their ability to keep the ball when they're under a bit of pressure, to stop France. France had chances, but they didn't really build up a head of steam, which is slightly different. They were dominant, but couldn't create as much as they would have liked.
Yeah, and whoever Spain face in the final, let's be honest, you can't really see them losing.
Yeah, they're favourites.
You really can't. And I've no doubt, and I have enormous sympathy. A lot of neutrals will want them to win this. And if I wasn't an England fan, and you take out England, put in France against them, or whatever, you probably would, because I think the football purists would want you to do that. But also the manager,
he's funny.
He's got
a school teacher vibe about him.
It does a little bit. But
see at the end where all the players are up in the technical area, and the fourth official's speaking to De La Fuente, and he turns around and he's like, "Come on, lads, move back."
Yeah.
It was like a school assembly.
It was a bit,
but like a cool teacher, like a legitimately cool teacher.
Yeah,
one you like, definitely. But again, he was. People were unconvinced when he took the job, and blah 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 blah. But look at the way he's going about it, and it's again that sort of squad harmony as well, and a happy camp and so on. The details we mentioned in previous pods, he will make sure everyone feels valued, everyone feels wanted, and these things are so crucial in any walk of life and at any football team. But when it comes to international football, people are away from their families, all this sort of stuff. You're in this kind of strange environment where you have the world's press in on you and your fans and blah, 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 blah. It's such a highly pressured environment and such a unique one. To make sure everybody's happy, to make sure there's a 16-year-old and a 38-year-old and everybody's on
who's
board.
older than his dad.
Indeed, and all that kind of stuff.
Ask his dad what records he's got.
Exactly. Emotionally as well, he has...
Is your dad like the Allman brothers?
The Olmo brothers.
Got his number.
He has played an absolute blinder, and to keep all that ticking over, and for them to be enjoying their football as well and expressing themselves on the pitch, it's a great credit to him.
And if I may, that's what makes football so interesting, because if you look at it on paper going into this game, talking about the managers, it's an absolute mismatch.
Yeah.
I mean, Deschamps won what he's won. He's basically European royalty as a player as well. His CV's as long as your arm. It's a mismatch. De La Fuente's managed youth team level, academy level at Spain and some other places, and not really had the career.
Won the UEFA Nations League.
Deschamps was vying to be the first person to win the Euros and the World Cup as a player and a manager.
No, sorry, Jim. Marcus was saying something about that Nations League.
I'm saying that, Lewis, that we were talking about EGOTs outside.
We were.
Is that the footballing EGOT, the Nation League?
Nations League. He's on for the Euros, and you wouldn't put it past if they won the World Cup.
The World Cup, European Championship, Nations League, the Wennel.
Yeah,
is he going to win a Wennel?
Or the Wenk. Maybe you want to put the Copa America in there as well if you're feeling really...
The Wenkle.
You
can't win the Copa America as well. That'd be impossible.
Hey, look, an EGOT's not easy.
No, it's true.
No, but it's...
You've got to sing and act, mostly.
No, okay, fine. Yeah, but even if you play and manage, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been incredible.
Good luck. Good on Spain.
The only sad thing, or the annoying thing for them, was what happened to Alvaro Morata. It looked like he picked an injury after full time because some dickhead fan runs on the pitch. It was a member of the security.
It's like the
team.
Gonçalo Ramos thing, wasn't it, for Portugal?
It was.
Yeah.
That was a photographer, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think it was someone chasing a pitch invader, wasn't it?
They were in
Spain.
It was. It wasn't a photographer trying to get a good shot. It was the guy who was running on trying to deal with a pitch invader.
Yeah.
And he runs on, and of course he slips and goes into Morata.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday you guys were talking about Morata saying that people in Spain don't respect him, and now he's got through to the final with the Euros, and a man's run on the pitch and kicked him. So.
They literally hate him.
I mean,
his wife's going to be fuming.
I know.
Speaking of chat like that, though, did you see? I really must mention this because I forgot to mention it earlier. I read a report that Adrien Rabiot said before the game.
Yeah, that's right.
If Lamine Yamal wants to play in the final, he will have to do more things than he has done so far.
that's it.
We'll consider that,
stepped up to that.
Should we consider that matter settled? Then, maybe? Get a quote from your mum on the way home. Is your mum driving you home? She can put on the hands free.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like,
how's that going to help?
The out-of-contract Rabiot, who was struggling to decide between moving to La Liga and the Premier League, might come to England.
Yeah.
Great.
It's just ridiculous behaviour, and he's got punished for it.
Yeah, he has.
So there we are. All right, everybody. Coming up in the second half, we've of course got a preview of Netherlands versus England tonight, and a little bit of Copa America chat, including Lionel Messi. See you in a moment.
Well, here's a good one for you. I just learned the other day. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Life is not a waste of time, and time is not a waste of life. So let's stop wasting time, get wasted, and have the time of our lives.
Come on, Gareth. Don't stop the party.
Gareth Southgate there.
Netherlands versus England tonight. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
What better way than to start with a bit of Pitbull motivational chat?
I can't think of any.
No, it's definitely no better.
All 26 members of England's squad are thought to be available for tonight's match. Luke Shaw is expected to start on the bench.
Yeah, I thought he'd start yesterday. I thought he'd start the game, but apparently now it's going to be Trippier again.
I think that is probably the most sensible option, though, right?
Get out, Jim.
Because what if Luke Shaw just pulls up injured? I'm just thinking of how Gareth's going to think about it. It's risk assessment, isn't it? And it's risk management. I think Shaw will probably feature, but this does feel to me like the most sensible way to do it, because you're essentially going to get a bit more width with him coming on. So you're likely to improve in the latter stage of the game, have a bit more energy, a bit more legs. I think if these are the circumstances, it's the sensible way to do it.
So from the point of view that I think Andy or Marcus made yesterday about the idea of how energetic Denzel Dumfries is and getting up and down, I guess you've got to pick someone who's best capable to deal with that. And the thing is, I don't even know if Trippier's got that much in his legs these days anyway.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people
not the
say
Trippier of like 5 years ago.
He's the best sort of defensive matchup for that. I don't know about that.
But I guess that's the thing, isn't it? When you're in your 30s, a not brilliant season becomes, are your powers leaving you? I guess that's the thing.
Yeah.
But either way, he's not in amazing form.
I mean, much has obviously been made about his lack of left foot and obviously being a right-footed player. I mean, it depends how you play, and of course it depends how the rest of the team play and the results go. There was no talk, if I remember correctly, about Ashley Young being a right-footed left wing-back when England played 3-5-2 in the World Cup 2018. But
we were all so drunk. We were all just drunk, and we were all singing Three Lions.
Yeah,
but our
we were
expectations
barely thinking at all.
And our expectations were non-existent.
Yeah, so it was that therefore that wouldn't be mentioned. But Trippier is in there because he's one of Southgate's stalwarts.
He's one of his trusted lieutenants.
One of his trusted, who's got big game experience, etc., etc. So, I was 50-50 on whether I thought he would start Luke Shaw or
We
Trippier.
don't know Shaw's state either, do we? Don't know his match fitness and stuff.
So he's gone for Trippier over Shaw.
Apparently.
Whatever. Yeah, that's what we're very much expecting. Now, this is a chance for England tonight. And we've been saying this all throughout the tournament. And I don't want to start saying, England are going to play like Spain. As we mentioned yesterday, that they're not going to do hugely anything different. But it was a little bit of an improvement against Switzerland. It wasn't quite there. But England now, if they were to lose to the Netherlands, no matter how they would lose, the feeling would be a bit like what France have got today.
Yeah.
You never got going. You never really did anything. You know, everyone, those who say, you trust the process and we keep going and don't worry, stay assured. You know, Jordan Pickford saying in the group stages, just calm down and enjoy the pubs, enjoy the experience, all this kind of stuff. That just suddenly comes to a grinding halt.
You can trust the process if there's progress.
Yeah.
And that's what it's not felt like so far. Now, the only way there is progress really is if England win the tournament.
Indeed.
Because there's been no progression in the game. So it is like with France in that only the result will justify the means.
Yeah.
The Switzerland performance was better, but it was marginal, wasn't it? I think it wasn't so much better that you think, you know what, we might,
have cracked it.
tear the Netherlands apart. Here.
I think Switzerland are a good team.
Yeah, well, exactly, true, absolutely.
And I would,
but it's the challenge in front of you, isn't it?
It is, but to also offer a counterpoint to the stuff you guys are saying, and I don't really know which side of the fence I fall down on. With England, I wonder whether there's an idea that the pressure is reducing. I know that sounds counterintuitive.
That's what Southgate said.
But I think I've sort of agree with it. I think if you look at the expectation, given what's come before, given what stage of the cycle they're in with Southgate, and given the players they've got, it's no question the pressure after the performance in the first game, after not winning the second game, and after the stinker of the third game, the pressure to go out in the group stage was high, and it's been reduced, I think, ever since. You have a difficult one with Slovakia, but you go through. Pressure's reduced again because I don't think quarterfinal is a disgrace. Switzerland, you get through to the semi. I understand your points you're making from a point of view with progression and what people expect of England, but from the players' point of view, if you go out, say tonight they get blitzed by Netherlands, who finally hit their straps. Gakpo's amazing, Simons is amazing. They're solid at the back. Stuff they're capable of, Netherlands, but they haven't quite put it all together yet. Say they do that and England bomb out. In retrospect, is it terrible? Semi-final again? It's not terrible, is it? It's not embarrassing.
I agree with your
point. It's not embarrassing. It's a good record on paper, etc., etc. And actually, I do think I think the pressure does seem less, and we've seen Gareth Southgate talking about it, and we've seen a lot of
because they were desperate not to embarrass themselves.
Absolutely, but I also think this is an ideal opponent for that because I think a lot of England's problems have obviously been psychological in the past. When they come up against someone, they have an inferiority complex against them. There's this sense that they're always going to lose. I think there's a bit of that in the France game in the World Cup as well. You almost sort of manifest it by worrying about it happening and then opening the door to it happening. And I think that's also affected us with penalty shootouts in the past as well. But I don't know where the Netherlands kind of sit on that scale. We've not played them in a tournament since Euro 96. So there's not that sort of... And obviously we won that game, so there's no sense of like a kind of a wound to be reopened. We've been to a final recently, and to me as a fan, that makes a big difference in how I feel when I'm sat here with the expectation of what might happen. This is a pathway we've gone down before. We've done it before. We know we can do it again. The players must feel like that as well. That is a huge thing, and I don't really feel a sense of trepidation going into this game. And I think part of it's the opponent. Part of it is, as you mentioned, Luke, that it's already pretty impressive to have got here. It maintained Southgate's record of being very successful as England managers go. And I actually think it's set up really, really nicely for England to be calm and to try and control the game.
I actually agree with you, Jim. And I think that the getting to the final in Euro 2020, I think a lot of people have thrown the baby out of the bathwater there because England didn't win.
Yes.
And actually, semi-final did seem to be a bit of a glass ceiling, which is odd to say because it was really kind of 3 semi-finals since 1990 kind of thing. So it seemed odd to suggest that. But the fact is they got there. So yes, some of these players involved have gone through to a final, and again, with Southgate, it has been sort of by and large improvements over as tournaments go. The playing style and the feeling around the country has not been improved in this tournament, but they're there, and I totally agree. Southgate himself, he admitted, as you said, Luke, that the outside noise and pressure got to them. they did look tired, and the tiredness has been a bit of a problem. But when you look at Declan Rice has covered the most distance of any player at Euro 2024, you think, well, actually, okay.
They've had a couple of extra times, though.
And
so he's had a chance to do that.
Yeah, true.
Foden's number 5 for that as well.
Yeah, so Foden, you kind of go, okay. And actually, when you grow in confidence, when you grow as a group together, a penalty shootout victory is it's a great way to win a game. It's a horrible way to lose one.
Is.
But it bands people together. And now England, again, Southgate talks about memories and moments and all the rest of it. They have a few more now.
Yeah, and I think as well, like the performances at this point, as I said, are just not important at all. The fact that they've had the ability to haul themselves out of the shit late in the game twice, I think is enormously important in terms of belief.
Because that's un-English, like.
Yes, and what you were saying before, Luke, about, well, if the Netherlands finally click and bring it all together, ain't no one changing or clicking at this point in the tournament, I don't think. I don't think we can expect anything dazzling from England, and I don't think we can expect anything perfect from the Netherlands. But that doesn't matter in terms of getting a result. What they've built is something else.
Semi-finals are for winning.
Exactly.
Like they always have been. They always have been. No one remembers losing semi-finalists. And I think going back to the noise and the
apart from us in 1996.
Yeah,
I'm taking
because
the piss.
It's us. Because it's us. Like, it's not a big. England losing in 1990 in the semi-final isn't a big deal anywhere outside of England, not even in Germany.
No.
But the noise and the outside noise and stuff, and that's a really important point, I think, because what you find during international tournaments in the summer is, and this is going to sound like I'm criticising people, and I don't mean to, but I can't think of any other way to say it. Loads of people who don't normally watch football, and they watch the games in big communal environments where they decide they want to become football fans for the summer. And I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper about it. I think that's absolutely fine. It's great. The atmosphere is amazing. Like the summer of 2018 was some of the greatest memories I've had as a football fan. I loved it, and I loved that everyone was into it. So I do actually come from a position of enjoying it. But what it means is loads of people who don't really care about England when they're playing the Nations League or they're playing a friendly, the people who are most likely to complain to you in the office about, oh, I've seen the England friendly last night, no, I don't bother with friendlies, are the ones who have big opinions about England now. And they watch them in these communal environments where if it's not absolutely earth-shattering quality after the first 10 minutes, they all get their phones out and they all sit around chatting to their mates and they complain about how shit it was. That informs the wider ecosystem of the discourse around the England team every single time they play in a tournament.
Until this point.
And it's informing it now, right? So we have to... What I'm trying to say is we have to advise a bit of perspective. The fact of the matter is, this, someone. If I said to you at the start of 2018, fast forward 6 years, and Kieran Trippier will be playing his third semi-final for England, you'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" The perspective's important. Loads of people who don't know anything about football are having massive opinions all over social media all summer, and that is what's informing this narrative. The fact is, England are there, and I said to you on Monday or possibly last week. It isn't a coincidence this keeps happening. You want to start talking about how terrible England are. Listen to Marcus's point about how many goals they scored in 2022 and were unfortunate to go out to France. Listen to the fact that the record speaks for itself. England are here on merit. They deserve to be here. Hardly anyone, with the exception of Spain, has actually played that well in this tournament anyway. So let's just maintain a bit of perspective and bring us all the way back around to Andy's point, which is that at this point, it's about winning games.
Yeah.
And England have done that.
I mean, part of the heartbreak of tournaments gone has been that something's felt slightly unlucky or slightly unfair. And essentially, Southgate's big thing is managing those margins, isn't it? And it's mentally preparing players to stand up in those moments and stop the thing that feels slightly unjust or unlucky or unfair from happening and responding to it and controlling it.
Or just putting it out of the mindset.
Whatever it is you have to do to essentially banish it. And he has done that effectively.
In fact, they've left other teams feeling like that.
Indeed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Here's just one final thing from me. I think, tonight, England will either go through to a final or they won't. And if they do go through to a final, it'll be a second European Championship final in a row, as we all know. In retrospect, we're going to look at this Southgate era and we're going to say either 2021, the Euro 2020, was the high watermark of the Southgate era, and they had that opportunity and they didn't take it, right? It's penalty shootout, as you said, it's a difficult way to lose. It's not great, could go either way, didn't go our way. If we get to the final again tonight, it's a chance for them to build another high watermark and maybe even go a step further. But ultimately, I think it all ends for Southgate's England tonight or Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, I hope it's Sunday. It may well be tonight.
Yeah.
But semi-finals are for winning. They've got to do whatever they can to win. And if Andy says, who knows more about European football than anyone I know, if he says that Netherlands aren't going to click now, I'll take that. I'll absolutely take that all day long. I'll take it to the bank.
Well, I already said to you, didn't I, Marcus, to you and Vish, that if there is sometimes the stars of a tournament, and particularly the stars of a Euro, only really have one or two great games, and you forget the details.
You're absolutely right.
Later on, and you can say that for Modric, Arshavin,
Zinedine Zidane in 2006.
Zinedine Zidane. But if there was ever a game that is chiselled for Bellingham and Foden to have an influence, this is it.
Yeah, and
the weakness of the Netherlands that they can't do anything about is that gap between a midfield that has done the best it can, that when it's been decimated, and that defence which is relatively unprotected. Who are the players who can make the most of that space? Well, you know who the players who can make the most of that space are. So if Saka had his moment against Switzerland, and I'm not against him having another one against the Netherlands, but if I had to bet who would make the difference in this game, I think it's set for Bellingham and Foden to make the difference.
Well, I think Foden is due a moment. And that's not to criticise him.
He
but
came very close and he hit the post.
Yeah, Bellingham's had his. Kane's had his, Saka's had his, and these are
that's
the
all
forward,
it takes.
and
Not
these are
90
the forward-
brilliant,
no,
not 90 brilliant
indeed,
minutes. So it
indeed.
doesn't take that.
Can I just build on that point though very quickly, just to say that for that to happen and for that gap to be exploited, which I agree exists, we need a centre forward who can occupy those centre backs.
Well, this is the chat,
and if Kane can't do that, you may find that someone like Van Dijk, who would have played against Kane a million times and is obviously a very experienced operator, and De Vrij, who's got a lot to credit him as well in terms of his strength and his positional quality.
And De Ligt, who plays for the same team as him, so he knows Kane.
If
he does play,
they could have an easy night because Kane won't be able to occupy.
And that's where Southgate, I think, that's where he has to be bold if indeed it calls for it. Kane will start the game and he should start the game. But as you say, if we get to half time, an hour in or whatever it is, and it's kind of like Van Dijk is thinking, blimey, I've played against this guy loads of times and it was much tougher than this. This is easy peasy. You've got to make that decision, because for England to go out maybe on a whimper and for people to moan about the same things as Southgate, let's hope that is not the case, of course. But England now have players who have been involved in this run to the semi-final, and whether they've played just a few minutes or taken a penalty or whatever, they're all involved. And I tell you something, Ivan Toney is chomping at the bit to get on that pitch
for sure
right now.
And can I ask a quick question of Andy very quickly? What do you make of the Dutch goalkeeper, Verbruggen, who plays for Brighton? And I don't actually think he's that good.
Nice to have a Bart in there, though, isn't it?
Great to have a Bart. It is.
Shoot on sight.
Well, I'm not going Sunday League about it. But the reason I'm saying that is in the context of like Mike Maignan, who I watched last night, who can do everything. He flies out of his box 40 yards and makes an amazing tackle.
Sliding tackle, amazing.
Compared to, Verbruggen wouldn't be among the best goalkeepers at the tournament, right?
No, he wouldn't. And it's not really a fair comparison, because I think if you look at all the Netherlands goalkeepers, they always were going to need to be well protected, because there's not an enormous amount of experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing Jordan Pickford turning up to the Russian World Cup with not a lot of experience, or for Verbruggen on his own, but it's not like they've got an experienced goalkeeper to step in who's got 50 international caps or 60 international
Which
caps.
you can't. I kind of feel like, because Verbruggen's only 21, right, and he's been rotated in and out of this Brighton system under De Zerbi.
Yeah.
And that's it's not his fault. I'm not criticising him necessarily. I'm just saying I don't think he's of an amazing quality compared to other goalkeepers.
And
he
didn't cover himself in glory for that Turkey goal.
He
either,
didn't.
Did he?
And I sometimes wonder if you were able to choose in the latter stages of a tournament, you want like a 30-year-old operator in there who's seen it, or you want someone with a lot of caps under his belt. And I wonder whether England. The reason I thought of it is partly because of Maignan, partly because you mentioned Toney there. Just the confidence to try something. England have got a lot of players like that, and it could be exploitative of Verbruggen.
Do remember all of these men are Dutch.
Yeah, true.
Confident isn't an issue.
No, that's true.
Not an issue at all.
But overconfidence is. I could catch that one of my arse cheeks. Oh, it's gone in. You know what I mean? Overconfidence.
We'll get another one.
Yeah,
be fine. I was to sort of bring it back slightly to Kane and Toney, etc. If the scenario plays out that you've just posited, that after an hour, 65 minutes, whatever, Kane isn't really troubling the defenders. Southgate recognises that he needs to make a change and he acts. Now, these are all big ifs. We've not seen him really do that
Big
yet.
ifs.
But
Particularly Southgate acting.
Indeed. Let's put the hypothetical forward. With a little bit of the game left, do you put on Tony or Watkins? Because I think Watkins
I think that's a
stretches
fair
the game
question.
a lot more.
Yeah,
and I think he might go with Tony because Watkins' penalty record isn't great and he might factor that in for the shootout. But
you would think so. Again, in this hypothetical, if it's in normal time, I think you have to make the best substitution to win the game. If it's 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left, and you're thinking it's a bit of a stalemate, okay, but maybe we'd rather well, then you bring on Tony for Watkins. It's a like for like kind of thing.
he did it to Grealish, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's your answer there. I think it's probably unlikely going on Southgate's record. Kane would have to be particularly tired. I mean, you saw what had to happen to him for him to be taken off.
Yeah.
But it's an important
he
choice.
scored in extra time against Slovakia as well, so it is useful to have him there. We have seen
It's an important choice, as you say, Jim, because I think what, say, Ronald Koeman did very well in the knockout games, he picked a horse for a course on both occasions. So they take off Bergwijn at half-time in both of the knockout games so far. They replace him with Marlon for the first one because there's space behind Romania,
and then Vegos for the second one.
Vegos for the second one because it's a completely different situation. So just because Tony did really well when he came on against Switzerland and against Slovakia, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily the right player for this, and that Watkins might not be the better choice. Especially, we talked about Kane and his current lack of mobility compared to what he normally has. Van Dijk hasn't looked amazing so far. I wonder if a bit of mobility you can get at him.
But I think the basic stuff Van Dijk's always going to do well though as a centre back, and I think that you do need someone to occupy him. The question about Tony and Watkins for me just depends on how Netherlands set up, because you can put defenders under a lot of pressure, centre backs, by playing off their shoulder and they shit themselves and they start second guessing and start dropping deeper, and that occupies them. But you can also occupy them like a hustle and bustle, physical Didier Drogba kind of way. And I think Tony's the latter, and Watkins is probably the former. Watkins always looks to get on the shoulder and getting in behind. And I wonder whether, actually, it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but if England were to get to the final and Spain were to really push up, dominate possession, leave some space behind, Watkins might be your guy for that.
Oh, don't start talking about
I'm just
tactics
saying,
for the final. The game, of course, is on ITV tonight, and this is another chance for Southgate's England to, go a step further.
Break a hoodoo.
Indeed, because England, since 1996, have only won 29% of major tournament matches broadcast solely on ITV compared to 72% on the BBC. So again, a chance to create a little bit of history.
But if it's going badly, at least, if you
switch the broadcaster.
If you take into account the Everton-Liverpool FA Cup tie, where famously they missed Dan Gosling's goal because they went to an ad break. On ITV, they can just go to an ad break if it's going badly. Yeah. You can't do that on the BBC.
In other words, we could North Korea it.
Yeah,
we can all convince ourselves.
England are losing. What offer has Gala Bingo got?
Yeah, they are.
I would say that the game done changed here. People used to like Gary Lineker, and now they don't.
I think
you'd rather go. I'd have Pugac all day long over Lineker personally.
Yeah, but
it turns out Pugas is pretty good on the pitch as well, doesn't it?
There you go. I'm happy with that.
I think you're comparing their.
Okay, let me put it another way. Did you answer this yes or no? It's a straight answer, yes or no.
Why is it?
We'll go round the table.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy Gary Lineker signing off in Spanish last night on the broadcast? Yes or no?
Yes.
Liar.
Turned it off by then.
Yeah, good answer.
Same.
Yeah, good. So no one enjoyed it.
What?
You don't want more of that, do you?
I just said I enjoyed it.
You didn't enjoy it.
And then I watched some tennis. All right.
You played Gary at tennis.
Let's finish with a bit of Copa America chat. Argentina beat Canada last night to reach the final of the Copa America.
Candy, that's a Spanish word that means cup.
Is that right?
Yeah, but it's pronounced copper. Though.
Gary Lineker told me.
Drake bet $300,000 that Canada would win.
Idiot.
Yeah, he's a dickhead, isn't he?
Yeah,
we knew that before the bet, didn't we, Jim?
I think he's one of the worst people around.
He's a drip, isn't he?
Yeah, he's an absolute wet wipe. Proper wetty.
You're going after all the big names today.
I have to say, I judge Kendrick Lamar for getting stuck into him, though.
But he did smash him, though.
Yeah, but it's like
fish in a barrel, is it? Fish in a barrel,
exactly.
Yeah. It's like England versus Netherlands. Fish in a barrel stuff.
Yeah, but if you want fish and chips, someone has got to kill those fish.
They have.
I don't know what I mean by that, but perhaps you do.
Lionel Messi's goal wasn't a vintage goal. It wasn't like, oh my God, do you remember when Lionel Messi scored that goal? He thought he was offside. He only just feathered it anyway.
Chalk it off then.
But it still counts.
Okay.
It still counts.
Okay.
Canada have done very well under Jesse Marsh to get to the semis, though.
They have, yeah. Building on the fine work of Fizzer, of course.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.